Good morning, Algebra 1, or Algebra A. Both of you guys will be watching these videos, so at some point. 1.3 discusses real numbers and the number line. The number line might be something that you guys have already seen before. I'm hoping it is. Real numbers are pretty much everything that we're going to be discussing this year. If you go to Algebra 2 will actually be dealing with imaginary numbers. So real numbers are fractions, decimals, both repeating, non-repeating. They are irrational numbers. The most common one that we're going to be talking about is pi. They are whole numbers. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. They are the integers of them, so they're the opposites as well. So we're going to be talking about all those today in this lesson. The objective is to classify, graph, compare real numbers, and define, and notice this word estimate again, estimate square roots. So let's dive in. Our key concept today is square roots. So if I look at this, a is a square root of a number b if a squared equals b. So notice that b is going to, b is going to be a times itself, because it's an a squared, a times a. Yes, a squared really is a times a. So a times a equals b. So one of these a's is going to be classified as a square root. Okay? So 7 squared equals 49. So therefore 7 is the square root of 49, because again, 7 times 7 equals 49. Therefore 7 is the square root. So it's whatever is times itself that gives me the answer. That's going to be the square root. Okay? So looking at this, we get into some vocabulary here. This is a radical symbol. Do not get this confused with the division symbol. It is a radical symbol. This is a radical symbol. And it indicates non-negative. Now remember, non-negative square root, so called a principal square root. The expression underneath the radical symbol is called the radicand. Think about when you can somebody, you put them inside. So it's whatever's inside, it's radicand. Okay. Together, the radical symbol and the radicand is called a radical. So go ahead and label these parts. What is A? What is this guy, the symbol? And what is the whole entire thing? So pause the video just for a second and label these guys. Okay, assuming you guys paused the video and you labeled them, you would have said that this is the radicand, right? Because it's inside. You canned it, you put it inside. This is the radical symbol. And this whole entire thing is called a radical. It's again important to realize the terminology, because when you get into the definitions, or not the definitions, the directions of your guys' homework assignment, you're going to have the word radical in there, and you need to know what that means. But if you don't know what it means, you can always reference your notes, because you know it's in your notes, right? Okay. So next up, and sorry for scooting this, we're actually going to solve some square roots. Remember, the square root is something times itself. So what times what times itself gives me 4? 2. Good. Okay, if you didn't know that, you could go to your calculator. So let's say you're using one of these orange calculators. What you could do is, and I gotta find it on here. So You see the square button, this x squared. If you notice, there's a little green button, the green in here, that has a little radical symbol above it. Well, how do I get to the green symbol? By hitting the second key, green symbol. Whoops, I need my help if I turn it on, right? Green symbol, second key, x squared, because that's going to give me the radical symbol. Put in 4, hit the arrow key, press equals, and it gives me 2. Okay? We're going to be talking about perfect squares in a little bit, and if you know your perfect squares, some of these problems are going to be so easy. Okay? So, 25. Again, this is what times what, the exact same thing, gives me 25. Good. Some of you guys are saying 5. Awesome. Well, again, if you didn't know that, we could come in here, hit the second key, hit the x squared button, hit 25, hit the equal button, and get 5. Let's say you're using a school calculator and it was like this one. On this one, you would actually go to this button right here. All you're gonna hit is 25, and then you're gonna hit this, the radical right here, and it'll tell you it's 5. So this one is a little bit easier to find the square root, less hitting buttons, 25, and hit the button, and you get it. But you can still see that you can easily find it using both calculators. Okay, so that takes care of that one. What about this guy? Well, on this one, what this really means too, and we'll discuss this a lot later on with the properties and all that stuff later on, I believe it's like chapter 9, I think. It is the square root of 64 over the square root of 9. Well, you can figure that out, right? What is the square root of 64? If you didn't know that it was 8, that's okay. But you can also plug it into your calculator, right? What's the square root of 9? 3. How can I plug this into my calculator all at once, though? And this is, too, where a lot of people might get into an issue. When you're on this calculator, you're going to want to hit parentheses and hit 64 ABC 9, close parentheses, and then you're going to want to hit the square root. Okay, now the problem with this is, notice this is a decimal. Notice I don't like decimals. I like fractions. So how can I make this turn into a fraction? Remember, I can hit the second key and the arrow back key. And let's see here. I can also hit the second key and the ABC key, and that'll turn it into 8/3, which is what I would prefer on this. As an 8/3, not a 9/3. Sorry for the glare. Okay, so I would prefer this to be at 8/3. I really don't want you writing this out as 2 2/3. Okay. How can I do it on this calculator? Well, let's look at this one. On this one, again, in order to get to the radical symbol, I need to hit the second key and the x squared. Now, remember how to put fractions on here? N over D. And then I can type in 225, hit the down arrow key, 169. Because I'll be very honest with you, I think 225 is 15, but I'm not 100% sure. I do have my squares, perfect squares memorized up to 13, and I would encourage you to do that. So hitting enter, it is 15 over 13. Okay, and again, if you want to take a little bit of a longer way in about it, you can also say that this is the square root of 225 over the square root of 169. All right, given that, go ahead and try out these two problems. So pause the video and try out these two problems. Okay, assuming you did that, you would have came up with, let's see, oops, second key, x squared key, 0.64, arrow, came up with 0.8. Okay, next one, second key, and then x squared key, because that gives me the radical symbol, 6.25, entering in the radicand, and came up with 2.5, because 25 times 25 is 625. Okay, so that concludes our part 1 of this.